So without much further ado, I'll just start into the topic um, of data management plans. It's going to be very like sort of beginner-based coffee lecture. So it's really just like the basics of data management planning. If you're already quite advanced in the topic, I'm afraid you might not really be able to take that much home with you today. But if it's kind of a new topic for you, then I think this is the right event for you. All right, let's begin. So, what is a data management plan? So, I've given you a little bit of a definition here. It's basically a structured description of the handling of research data generated or used in a research project, both during the course of the project as well as after the end of the project. And the basic information that it generally contains can vary from project to project, but usually it contains information on what kind of data will be generated or collected, how they're documented, who will have access to the data during the project, where the data will be stored, how they will be backed up and archived, as well as how openly they will be shared with others after the end of the project. So there's like the basic cornerstones of what a data management plan should contain. And we will be looking at this information, at this content that a DMP is supposed to have in a bit more detail later on. Right now, though, I would like to sort of give you an idea of where a data management plan is supposed to happen within the life cycle of research data, of the research project as well. So basically, what the data lifecycle is a description of which stations research data go through within the course of a research project. So basically, the first part would be the planning of the project, proposal writing, all that sort of stuff. Then you would have a collection of data, analysis. You would store your data, make them accessible somehow, and then hopefully people will be able to reuse it. And where the data management plan comes into play within this cycle is in the planning stage. It's quite self-explanatory since it's called a data management plan. Um, so you can already sort of get an idea that data management planning is something that's supposed to happen fairly at the beginning of a new research project. Now, as I said, we're going to talk a little bit more about what type of thing you should be putting into a data management plan. And this overview is also a rough idea. It might vary on your needs, on your project's needs, what kind of data you're collecting, etc., whether you need all of these and in what detail. But in general, it's a good idea to include most of this or all of it. So, firstly, we would generally include some administrative information. So this could be the project title, duration, associated institutions, researchers, as well as funder information. So you will want to give the name of your funder, maybe a funding number if you have one, the funding stream, etc. So this will be like the first section of your data management plan. And then generally the next one will consist of the data description. So you will basically have a section in which you describe whether you are going to be reusing any already existing data, and if so, which, and whether you will generate your own data. And that would then include a description of which data types, formats, and sizes you will be generating or collecting. What are your expected storage requirements for these data that you will be collecting? And what are the methods that you're going to use to do that, as well as hard or software that you might be using to collect or generate your research data. So that would be a fairly big chunk of your data management plan, kind of like the meat and bones of it. Then a third section will be dedicated generally to documentation of the research data and quality control. So here you might want to include whether you're going to use any metadata standards to describe your data, whether you're going to use any controlled vocabularies in your data or any ontologies, and if so, which ones, as well as any quality control measures that you're going to be implementing in your research project. So basically, what are you going to do to make sure that your research data in your project is going to be of a high quality, and then you're going to document that in your data management plan. Also, you're going to want to document in the DMP which tools will be necessary to reuse your data after the project's ended. Um, Now, in a fourth section, you will want to talk about data storage and data security. So basically, where you're going to store your data. Does this infrastructure have a backup strategy? If so, what does this strategy look like? Um, what does your access rights management look like? So can you give people access to your data? How will you make sure that only people that are supposed to have access do have access, and that the ones who are not supposed to have access don't have access? So this is something you will want to describe. The fifth section will consist of any legal issues that you foresee with your research data. So this could be any data protection issues. So for example, if you're working with people or any sensitive personal data, anything like that, you will want to discuss that in your data management plan, as well as which kind of measures you're going to be implementing to keep those data safe. If you're going to reuse data by third parties, you might want to discuss any copyright or IPR issues, so intellectual property rights. This is not always applicable, as I said, not everything needs to be in every DMP, but if you do foresee legal issues like that, you will want to discuss it. Then as well, in this section, you might want to include information about any usage rights or licensing that you will be applying to the research data that you're generating or collecting. Um, as well as any discipline-specific norms that apply to the handling of your research data. So any guidelines that your discipline might have issued, or also any general research data management guidelines that you're aware of. For example, a guideline that was issued by the institution that you work at, or by your state or country or whatever, stuff like that. Then in a sixth section, you're going to be talking about data sharing and publication. Basically, this section will be discussing how openly and if at all you're going to share your data with the public. This will include which data you're going to be selecting for publication, which publication or archiving infrastructure you're going to be selecting and why. So generally, this will be a research data repository or something of the sort. And then in your last section, you're going to discuss responsibilities and resources. And this is highlighted a little bit because it's important to actually think about this. So if you need any resources to store or archive or make your data public, such as money or a person who prepares them for publication or something like that, you will have to calculate that into your cost or into your budgeting. And this will then generally also already have to go in your proposal. So it's what I said earlier with the DMP occurring as early as possible in your data lifecycle is especially pertinent here when it comes to like costs, budgets, resources, stuff like that. And also what you're going to want to have in there is mentioning a person or an entity that will be responsible for research data management during or after your project. So you'll want to name someone who will see to it that whatever is in the data management plan will actually be done in real life. So these are some fairly like general broad categories that will mostly appear in any data management plan. Now, in what detail you will be doing this kind of depends on your funder, your funding program, and also your project's needs and how complex your project is. Um, but generally, it is better to be concise and brief rather than to be overly long. All right. Now, I've mentioned different funders and their requirements a number of times. So what I've gone ahead and done is do a little table, so an overview of some of the more important funders or biggest funders in Germany and what they require with regards to data management planning. As you can see, the EU and the Horizon Europe Framework Program do require that you write a data management plan, which is deliverable in month 6. They do provide you with a template that you can use and expect updates in case of significant alterations, as well as the end of the project. The Deutsche Forschungsgemeinschaft does not require you to write a DMP, which doesn't mean you are not allowed to. You can still do it. That's just not obligatory. But they do expect you to include information into your proposal. So generally, there will be a section that is specified where you will be expected to give some information about the handling of research data, and they do provide a checklist for what needs to go in that section. The BMF, BMBI do not have a general requirement. It depends very much on the individual funding program that your project is going to be located within. If it's required, then you will have to hand it in with your proposal. And they don't generally tell you what the content is going to be, except for if you're in empirical educational research, they do provide a template for that. And the same with updates. The BMBF, BMBI are not very consistent, so it always depends on the specific funding program that you're going to be in. And then lastly, Volkswagen Stiftung do also require a data management plan. You're supposed to submit it with your proposal, and they do provide a base DMP template that you can use, but also specify if you want, you can use a different one. Updates are not required for this one. So this is like a general overview of like the 4 most important funding streams that we have. Now, if you want to check your own institution's RDM policies, there is the site forschungsdaten.org who have an overview of research data policies that exist in Germany and at German institutions, and also an overview of local RDM support points where you can check whether your own institution does have one of those and where you can contact them. If you have any further questions on any of this, obviously I cannot go into too much detail today, since this is only half an hour worth of time that we have today. All right, now you might ask yourself, like, okay, I've never written a data management plan. I have no clue how to really do this despite of the information that you've been giving me here. Is there any help available online? And luckily, yes, there is. Um, Firstly, though, real quick, if you ask yourself, okay, but why should I invest all of this time into doing this? Because yes, it does take a little bit of time to write a data management plan. I want to give you 10 good reasons to do so. So the first one is a data management plan is often a prerequisite for access to funding programs. As you've seen, a number of funders do require it, and it does increase the chances of receiving funding even where it's not required. It saves time and nerves by planning ahead, and it improves the understanding of your own data that you have, as well by yourself and also group members and third parties. It facilitates coordination between project partners. Oftentimes, you will have partners from other institutions, other countries, even other continents. So it's good to have a common document. And it is the basis for any RDM relevant parts of a project's budget calculation, as we've already talked about. It does improve knowledge management. Especially this is relevant if you have frequent staff changes going on in your project or your group. And it creates clear responsibilities and thus reduces frustrations and misunderstandings. So nobody can say, oh, I thought it was your turn. Oh, I thought it was your responsibility. But these are then made clear in the data management plan. It therefore reduces the risk of data loss due to technical or human error. And it increases, and this is probably the most important one to anyone who's a scientist, the number of citations by providing clear reuse information for third parties and generally making sure that your data are well managed and well documented. All right, that's basically the the most important reasons for writing a DMP. Um, Now, there are some criteria for writing a good DMP. The content we've already looked at, but there's also some like structural information that I'd like to give you of what makes a DMP good. What you want to do is you want to have it well structured. So you want to have it structured in individual sections with clear headings of what you're going to be talking about. You want it as concise as possible, but as detailed as necessary. And you want to start it as early as possible for the reasons we've already discussed. You want to avoid redundancies and distinguish between measures during and after the end of the project. So think of the data lifecycle that we've been talking about and think of which measures do I need to take during the project, which will be applying at or after the end of the project. Also, a good DMP is a living document. So it shouldn't be regarded as, oh, I'll write it once and then I'll put it in my drawer and never look at it again, but more of something that is updated regularly if there are any changes in how you're handling your data. And it should be workable for all project partners and ideally be published together with your research data at the end of the project or whenever you're going to be publishing so that people can see, okay, what was actually your strategy for handling the data. Now, these are criteria for good DMP, but what should you avoid doing? Uh, the worst thing is, I think, if you don't start at all. So if you like, maybe let's not do that. So I think that's the worst thing that can happen. Um, then, as I already said, redundancies or repetitions, but also, and that's even worse in my opinion, empty or rehashed phrases like the data will be processed according to community standards. If that's all you're going to write, what does that mean? So what is the community standard you're going to be using? And what is it going to mean if you process it according to the community standard? So be more detailed. Um, Also mixing up research data and other project results in your DMP is not advisable. So other project results could be your normal article publications, journal publications. Really focus on research data in your DMP. And then also seeing writing a DMP as a nuisance rather than like a tool for better data management, I think is maybe something to avoid. A lot of people say, oh, but it was not a mandatory part of my proposal, which I totally understand. Time is money. We all don't have a lot of it, but it can really help you get your research data management strategy together. And then or also starting too late, so that it's actually impossible to really think about your strategy or calculate your budget. Um, Now, as to these resources that I mentioned earlier, so there's several resources available. If you've never seen a DMP before, what you might want to do is look at some examples by people that have already written one. And you can find examples in various places. For example, at the Digital Curation Center, at the Libre DMP catalog. On Zenodo, there's a couple of DMPs that have been published and are freely accessible. And the University of Vienna also has a collection of Horizon 2020 DMPs in their Phaedra tool. Um, Now, if you say, all right, well, that's great. I can look at examples, but what about further resources? There are checklists, guidelines, and templates available for you. I've given you like a mix of English and German speaking ones, since I don't know which is your like favorite language. So there's a very good overview of checklists and DMP templates for the DFG, Volkswagen Stiftung, BMBF, and Horizon Europe projects at the HU Berlin website. There is also a Science Europe practical guide, which has a large section on DMP writing that I've linked here for you. And the Leibniz University of Hanover also created a guide to creating a data management plan in 2020 that I think is pretty good and very usable for anyone who's never written one. Now, if you still don't feel like doing it all by yourself or manually, there are also DMP tools. So tools that can help you to like automate the process somewhat. I'm going to give you like the five biggest one that are on the market. So there's Argos, which is a tool developed by the EU projects OpenAIR and EU DAT. The target audience for this is basically scientists, researchers, and they do support machine actionable DMP templates, which means that your DMPs that you create with this template are machine readable, which is great if you want to publish them on a research data infrastructure like a research data repository. So that's one thing. Then there's the Data Stewardship Wizard, which is a Czech tool developed by Elixir, TU Prague, and other partners. And the target audience for that is more so data stewards who might also be here today, who support scientists in creating data management plans, or for other more advanced users who have done this before. Then there is, I think, like this is the oldest tool, which doesn't mean that it's not updated regularly, which it is. But like this is like the one that's been around for the longest. DMP Online, which is a UK tool for scientists developed and provided by the Digital Curation Center, the DCC. It has very extensive templates and guidelines, but mostly for UK funders or EU projects. So I would recommend this if you're in an EU funded project. There's also DMP Tool, which is an open source tool developed by various US educational institutions. The target audience here is mostly US scientists, even though it is usable without a US Edu account, so anyone can use it. This one also offers machine actionable DMPs. And my personal recommendation, last but not least, is RDMO, which is an open source German tool developed by a DFG funded project and is now hosted and worked by the RDM working group. And the audience for this tool is mostly German scientists, even though it is open for use to anyone. Now, generally, your own institution will have to host an instance of RDMO, but there are two web-based services available without that happening that you can just access as a normal researcher, which is the web-based RDMO instance on forschungsdaten.info, which is a RDM info portal, as well as the NFDI service DMP for NFDI, which is also based on RDMO. So you can access both of those freely. Just you just need a browser and the internet basically, and then can create DMPs on these. RDMO does also provide machine actionable DMP templates and also has many German-speaking funder-specific templates available, which are the two reasons why I would recommend RDMO to you if you do work in Germany, which I assume you do. If you still haven't got enough of DMP tools, there's a DMP tool guide that was created by me, a couple of colleagues. It's only like 4 or 5 years old, but I think it's still mostly applicable. So there's an overview of almost all DMP tools on the market. The target audience for this is RDM experts, data stewards, project leads, but also just scientists who are really interested in DMP tools. What it is basically an Excel table, a rather extensive one, that analyzes available DMP tools for the categories that I listed here. So we analyzed what is the target audience for this tool, the software basis, the licensing info, what does it cost, if anything, is it GDPR compliant, is it FAIR compliant, and what do we rate the usability of this tool? And you can look it all up and then maybe go, okay, this is the right one for me. So if you're interested in that, you can find this tool guide available on Zenodo. All right, and then all I have for you is some more information. So you can find some information about the Thüringer Kompetenznetzwerk Forschungsdatenmanagement on our website, Zenodo community and YouTube channel, and you can find more information about data management plans on forschungsdaten.info, on the FU Berlin side, and also with some NFDI consortia. For example, you can find a guide on how to write a research data management plan with Fairmat. And last but not least, shameless self-plug, we will have more events coming up in the future. So one of them will be our next coffee lectures. So April 30th, there will be a coffee lecture on the 5S data principle, which will be about how to organize your data with this 5S data management method. And there's a save the date for the Thuringian RDM days, which will be taking place in June. And we'll be focusing on RDM tools and best practice examples. It's open to the general public, and we will be posting more information about that on all our social media channels. And we'll be looking forward to seeing you there if you want.